In the months leading up to the 2016 presidential election, author and speaker Lance Wallnau was one of several evangelical Christian leaders who believed against all odds that Donald Trump would be the 45th president of the United States.
I had the strangest sense that I was dealing with something different. I was dealing with someone who wasn't an evangelical Christian, who was anointed for an assignment. And I didn't know where to go with that. So I went home, and all that I heard the Lord say is, Donald Trump is a wrecking ball to the spirit of political correctness.
Wallnau compared Trump to the Persian king Cyrus cited in the Bible. Cyrus decreed the Jews living in captivity in ancient Babylon could return to Israel and rebuild their temple. Wallnau expands on that theme in his book, God's Chaos Candidate, Donald J. Trump and the American Unraveling.
Well, Lance is here with us to talk more about this, and I've got to congratulate you. You wrote this book before the election. You know, I like to say to people, if you're going to prophesy, you got to do it before it happens.
Yeah, that's right.
And here it came to be.
Yeah.
Why? What inspired you to do this?
Well, he was running in the primaries against 15 other experienced people. And that was when the Lord spoke to me and said that he had his hand on him and that he was going to use him. And I heard the word Isaiah 45, and I looked it up, and I felt so powerfully that this would be the 45th president. But the line that freaked me out, Gordon, was, thus says the Lord to Cyrus, whom I've anointed, though you have not known me. And I started thinking how often Christians want to vote for the Christian guy, and they don't think in history that during crucibles, during particularly trying periods, a Churchill or a Lincoln may be where God hides himself. And so I just read, I don't know why I didn't catch it earlier, but that same Isaiah 45 says in verse 15, verily thou art a God that hides thyself. I think God hid himself in Donald Trump, and I think he's hidden right now doing something in America that would amaze us if we understood it.
Yeah. And Isaiah wrote that, and he had a direct revelation in the temple of God. He saw the glory, and then he wrote, surely you are the God that hides. And God seems to take delight in picking the unusual.
He does.
Or out of the norm.
Which leaves none of us safe.
Right. What is it that you think Trump is ordained, if you will, or anointed to do? What is he supposed to do? When
I wrote the book, I felt, and it was probably because I had some tremendous ominous forebodings what would happen if he wasn't elected. And I felt then, as I do now, that America's financial situation is precarious because of its debt and its deficit, et cetera. And my thinking then was that he was anointed as a Cyrus because he's going to stand in a crucible. And I think we do have a crucible coming. I think America's unraveling is happening in front of our eyes. We really do have two totally incompatible worldviews colliding institutionally right now. It won't take much economically. It won't take much in a global incident to really bring this thing to a full boil. This will be like a Lincoln or a Churchill, someone who God has put into position, who has the disposition to make the right decisions in that crucible. And I anticipate it's going to get a little more bumpy, not easier. And as much as I want everyone to breathe a sigh of relief, I think Christians need to recognize we have a window, actually, to be able to move forward and to affect change. And that if we just sit back and say, well, that was done, and go back to business as usual, we will be making a historic mistake.
Have we done that through the generations, though? I mean, I don't think it's anything new that we invest so much in the presidential election that we neglect to train the next generation.
Yeah, but I think the cost is cumulative. It's kind of like if you can abuse your body in your 20s, keep doing that in your 30s. Now, do that in your 50s and watch what happens. I think we're like the older man right now. And so we institutionally surrendered media. I mean, it's not a fiction that there is a bias in media. It's not a fiction that Hollywood has a bias. And it's not a fiction that academia is hostile to Christian thinking and conservative thinking. But what happens when academia and Hollywood and media upstream from, where culture's formed, starts electing people that resonate with those messages? We've got millennials coming up who are literally going to be 40, 50, 60 million of them voting. And you know what they, by and large, resonate with is socialism. And the truth is they don't understand socialism. because there's no debate being given to them from Marxist professors saying, do you really want to forfeit your dream? As your segment just said, millennials have dreams. If they understood that their dreams have to be cashed in so that everybody can have fair share to the same dream and how that doesn't work in history, I think you'd see a millennial awakening. So I think we've got to engage the next generation and think through, what does Christian worldview really mean in secular terms? How could we make it palatable to a secular audience?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I was really disturbed by a survey that showed millennials agreed with this statement: from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, which is straight out of Marx. I mean, they identified with that statement. They thought that was a good thing to do.
I know.
Without realizing the social cost. And by the way, some countries have tried that, and it didn't work.
And like Margaret Thatcher said, that socialism works up until the point where you run out of people with money. Then there's no one else to distribute it from.
Which is a good point. What do you think that God is saying right now?
I felt that it was daring enough in 2015. There's only like 3 people that were saying Trump's the man, because everybody was looking for a Christian first, and then people kind of piled on later as they lost Cruz and they lost other people. But I said, no, he's the guy, because God's got a controversy with the American church. We would love to have our deliverer on a white horse, but the church isn't engaging the nation, so God's going to do his untidy work in a Samson-like prophetic sense. And he may slay Philistines with the jawbone of an ass and not with eloquent oratory, but God's about to do something that's going to be unique. After I got the book out, I thought, well, my job's done now. I can get out of politics, but it wasn't that easy. The next thing that happened was I felt the Lord said, Daniel interceded. Cyrus came to power as a secular reformer. After that, Ezra was arising as a teaching priest. And Ezra mobilized the people of God to move in the direction God called them. And after that, Nehemiah came and built a wall. And the Lord said, study the sequence. Intercessors birthed an electoral breakthrough. Christians showed up in unprecedented numbers and got this man elected. He is not a spiritual reformer. He's a secular reformer. But he will be our friend. And he believes the church has answers. It wouldn't surprise me if Donald Trump says something like Cyrus made a decree. If Trump makes a decree or a statement that challenges the church to get engaged in the inner city and put their faith back into the nation, the nation needs to be spiritized. He's that kind of a guy that he can go that way. When that decree happens, the church is going to have to move from its obsession with itself and its own existence to engaging the world around it. At that moment, I think there'll be an awakening in America, and then the Nehemiahs can come build the walls or restore the boundaries that need to be reset.
Yeah, I think we're in an Ezra season.
There you go.
And that is the teaching of the Torah.
Exactly.
This is how you conduct life as a community.
There it is.
And if you do that, then we'll succeed.
And my God, if God can raise up oracles that are willing to, we've had a season of revivalists. I love revival, but Christians prefer to escape engaging culture into a kind of a spiritual zone. If we can get the new breed of revivalists to go out and be oracles that take these ideas. Millennials really are intrigued by courageous articulation of worldviews if you've got your act together. And I think that there's going to be something happening on campuses where Christians and conservatives are going to come alive speaking what they believe. And when the pushback comes, instead of crumbling, I think we have a generation that's not going to crumble. And it will be sexy then to be in the minority, and the minority is going to be Christian conservatives.
Okay.
That's where I'm putting my poker chips. I'm sticking them in the middle.
Okay. There are going to be some forces against that, though.
Oh, my gosh. Of course there will be.
And we're already seeing that. We're already seeing, I think, it's been slowly building, but I think we're at a point where Christian views are openly mocked.
Totally. Which is why it's perfect. Because it's now conservatism is really the mind. Remember, Abby Hoffman and George Carlin, back in the day, they were able to be controversial because they were the outspoken liberals against the conservative majority. Now the outspoken minority is the conservative because these campuses are so dominated by liberal thought. And millennials have a heart for the underdog. There's this justice thing. I think that God is setting something up where when think about young Whitfields and young Wesleys, young Edwards. There are many times the Awakeners were young. We think they're older, but they were young. And there were Cambridge kids and Oxford kids. I'm praying for God to raise up these young oracles that'll be able to literally push back on the cultural chaos, and it'll be very attractive because there'll be a community of people inviting people to Jesus is the ultimate reasonable factor. That Jesus is still appealing. It's Christianity that turns off millennials. But I think we can have a rebranding in one generation.
How would you encourage people who are watching right now to pray? What should they be specifically praying for?
I believe we have to pray for a remobilization of the grassroots believers. And when I say that, the left is very vigilant on creating websites now that are training and mobilizing grassroots. You're seeing protests going all over the place. I'm not so sure, Gordon, that the church is going to want to initiate this. It's counterintuitive to put together activity that pulls people out of the church focus. But I do think Christian leaders have to do it, and they have to start mobilizing locally to get believers together that will begin to organize and show up in terms of the public manifestation of unity. We probably need to have a move of God where Christians aren't afraid to come out of the closet and march and declare that they are for love and they're not for hate and they're for solutions and not for problems. There has to be an answer to the perpetual organizing on the left, and it has to come about from a praying prophetic community that is mobilizing on the right and saying there are people that believe for a better future for America, and it's not anarchy and it's not anger. And I think that will have its own life. It will take on its own grassroots, other morphing. But it has to start there where we connect with each other. And those people that share a concern for America say, I'm not going to sit back and just watch history unfold or unravel. I'll show up. Where am I needed, like the Minutemen? And I think every state is going to have its own substructure of how the community of faith shows up in the battle.
Have we lost, as a church, have we lost our even the thought that we can change the culture, that we can change things, whether it's problems in the inner city or race relations or the current police climate or any of the things that you look at our communities and you shake your head and say, I wish it could be different. But have we even lost the idea that we can make a difference?
That's the power of popular culture. It's worn us down. Listen, I was writing this book, God's Chaos Candidate, and at the same time that my friends have books like Harbinger, which are predicting the downfall of America, I'm saying, not so fast, Hashimoto. I think God actually is going to do something unusual and reverse the situation. But I was in the minority because there was almost more faith for the collapse of America than there was for revival.
It's like in our righteousness, we want judgment.
We're almost in agreement with the devil.
Not realizing that judgment's going to hurt us.
Right, I'm praying against the pilot, but I'm on the plane, But this is the 500th year of the Reformation. So I think that God is going to visit us in this year of the Reformation.
All right, they're playing the music. We're out of time. And if you want to learn more, the book is called God's Chaos Candidate. It's available wherever books are sold.